Welcome back, everybody, for our German Portuguese Forum 2020. It's nice to have you back in the live stream. We are coming to our panel two, to our second high-level panel of today, ambitious climate protection industries in Germany and Portugal. What opportunities and challenges does the transformation of the energy systems present for the economy? This is our guiding question for the upcoming hour. And this panel, of course, is clearly dedicated to the energy system transformation as an integrated climate and industrial strategy of key importance for climate protection. So we'd like to discuss, of course, the similarities between Germany and Portugal as being among the leading member states of the European Union in the renewable energy sector, but also about the to-dos concerning battery and concerning hydrogen storage technology development and solution providers as some projects to go further. Again, of course, you are kindly invited to be engaged. Send us your questions into our chat box. Dear audience, please let us know your questions in regard to our topic and in regard to our question. And of course, dear participants, dear panel participants, I already see you. Don't be shy. Please be open and invited to refer to a previous statement in our debate. So I'd like to introduce you now to the panel. The panel starts with Teresa Marquez. She's Director for Energy at Bondalti. Ms. Marquez, it's nice to have you with us today. Thank you for joining. And we have the Senior Advisor Climate and Energy at World Wildlife Fund Germany, Dr. Erika Bellmann, with us today. Ms. Bellmann, good to see you. And we have the Associate Director and Coordinator of the Tech for Energy Initiative at INESC Tech, one of the largest research and development interface institutions of the University of Porto, and he's also professor in the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Porto. Professor João Pecas Lopes is with us. Mr. Lopes, it's nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And we do have the Vice President, Science and Technology, Evonik Operations. Dr. Thomas Haas is with us.
Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Haas.
Good morning.
And we have the Director at the Institute for Innovation and Technology, Dr. Mark Bovenschulte. Mr. Bovenschulte.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Likewise.
everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining our high-level panel. So I'd like to start with you, Mr. Lopes. General introduction, of course, when we talk and discuss about an integrated climate and industrial strategy, where do you see Germany and where do you see Portugal in the way and on the path of the energy transition?
Okay, so good morning to all of you. First of all, I want to thank the German Portuguese Forum for this invitation. And well, if we look at Germany and Portugal, we can see that they are leading countries in Europe regarding the development of renewable generation for electricity production. And this is clearly one point to stress. But also, there is, in both countries, there is a concern towards the decarbonization of the economy. And so they both have developed plans to decarbonize the economy for the coming years. And this is also very important to stress.
How do you, I'd like to stay with you for a moment, how do your production processes interact with the opportunities and risks of the energy system transformation? What are your insights on that?
In terms of Portugal, you mean?
Yes, now we're talking about in terms of Portugal, sorry for that, yes. What is your perspective?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, the Portuguese economy is also very open to this transformation. And we are looking at for instance, to the electrification of many industrial processes. For those where this is cost effective, obviously, because some others, this may not be possible. And this is an opportunity for hydrogen in the future. But also, I mean, this transformation is also taking place in other sectors, like agriculture, for instance. We are also looking at the way to decarbonize the agriculture, and also looking at forests, the forests, where we also try to find out solutions to replace equipment that are using fossil fuels to operate in forests. And we are trying to find out solutions that use electricity instead of fossil fuels to move the machines and the equipment used for this purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Bovenschulte, I'd like to also have your insights. Where do you see Germany and Portugal? Where do they stand in terms of the energy transition?
Honestly spoken, the Portugal case is not so familiar. I'm not so familiar with the Portugal case, but with Germany, as the forum, this panel here is entitled Ambitious Climate Objectives, I would put a question mark there, because if you look at Germany, we have the exit from this coal electrification 2038, and I don't know if this is that ambitious. And today I've read in the newspaper the outcomes of a study done by a UK think tank, and they say that Germany in the energy and electric energy sector from the year 2030 is responsible for 30% of CO2 emissions in the European Union. So I could question if this is really something like a very ambitious climate objective. But on the other hand side, if we see what Mr. Lopez already mentioned, the hydrogen potential, I think Germany puts on quite a big effort. They invest now with this shock package from COVID, 9 billion euros to push forward the hydrogen thematics. Any country by now has a hydrogen strategy, and they invest, for example, in the northern part of Germany, in Heide, which is more or less closely located to Hamburg. There's a petrol refinery, but they will convert it in the biggest renewable hydrogen refinery of the world. They start up with 30 megawatts and will build it up to 700 megawatts. So this is something which is really pushing forward the climate neutral reconstruction of industry and energy generation. When it comes to such a process, and this was mentioned in the panel before, you have to think about how all these transition processes take place in the different regions. And there was mentioned as well the slogan of just transition, and to bring green transition and just transition together. This is quite interesting, but when you look at the means of the just transition, you find all the means which are already fully fledged in the regional and social funds. So to my personal opinion, when you look at the European platform, there is no specific way how to manage the just transition. And this is quite important, as it was mentioned before, to leave nobody behind. So there is a fully fledged framework of things to do, and ambitious objectives, yes. The day-by-day practice could be better. And of course, it needs something like a joint vision in turning this into reality. And this includes industry perspectives as well as societal perspectives.
Thank you, Mr. Bovenschulte. Ms. Marquez, of course, we are very interested. What keeps you currently busy? In which projects are you currently engaged in bringing the energy transition forward? Ms. Marquez.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, for the kind invitation. I believe that this transition is quite a challenge for the industry, because really we don't know yet what will be the amount of changes needed. We are looking into electrification, we are looking into hydrogen, we are looking at every ways to decarbonize. Still no technology is available yet for some processes, so quite a few challenges here. What we believe is that we can all achieve a good level of decarbonization if we all work together, meaning we have lots of good wind and solar production capacity in Portugal, as said. Germany has a lot of technology available, so we need to join efforts in order to become both decarbonized and everything can work together. So what we are working now, we are working on hydrogen projects and green ammonia projects. We are working on CCS and synthetic fuels. We are working on renewable production and how we can turn all our electricity green, maintaining our security of supply of energy, because this is very important for industry. So lots of challenges are ahead of us, and we are really working hard to understand how to position ourselves and where to find all the funds we need to really become more decarbonized.
Can you take us with you into your project? What are your biggest milestones so far, Ms. Marquez?
So first of all, we are working together with with a big consortium with one of the biggest hydrogen projects in Portugal, which is in the Portuguese hydrogen strategy. Sorry, when we are working on building green hydrogen and green ammonia plants to export to the center of Europe. So we are one of the main promoters of the green ammonia project in Portugal. With this, we expect to not only reduce our imports of ammonia, but to be able to export to the center of Europe green ammonia produced in the European Union with our solar capacities. This is a very big challenge. We are beginning in a lower scale, probably, and then we will move up. We will begin by doing a project for our internal consumption. This is what is expected, and then growing. So yeah, we are actually engaging in a big project of green ammonia and green hydrogen in Portugal.
Thank you, Ms. Marquez, for that moment. Mr. Dr. Haas, Vice President, Science and Technology at Evonik Operations, thanks for joining us as well. Thanks for being with us. Can you give us an insight into your current projects as well, please? What are your current milestones on the way to the energy transition?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much also for the invitation. Really a pleasure for me to be here. I would really like to take the next step from what Ms. Marquez just explained us, because we are very close to this. Our project at the moment is very close to consuming solar energy into hydrogen, and then hydrogen into a kind, we call it chemical storage. So, but it's not ammonia and it's not syn fuel, but it's more high value chemicals, but very similar like this. But there is one difference, and that is it's not a state-of-the-art technology, as people know. Let's see, from a point of chemists, it's called Fischer-Tropsch and similar technologies. That's not the kind we are doing. So we are using a very new biotechnology. So we are using very specific bacteria consuming hydrogen and carbon dioxide, and then producing not ammonia or fuels, but very specific chemicals like nature is doing. So as you know, nature is doing it very specific, very selective. That's what we are using. We are using technology we use because we use solar energy and we use carbon dioxide. So these are the two main feedstocks, and then it's converted into chemicals. So this is the technology we are mainly working on at the moment. And the milestone, really the next big milestone, is to show that this technology is working, so that we can run now into a demonstration plant, which is already showing it on a technical scale.
Thank you. Ms. Bellman is also with us, a Senior Policy Advisor in Climate and Energy for the World Wildlife Fund Germany since 2012. Welcome to you, and thanks for joining our stage. How to promote, Ms. Bellman, how to promote successfully the green electricity generation like photovoltaic, like wind power, onshore repowering and offshore wind power? What would you say? What is needed?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. And I would like to widen the scope of your question, if you allow, because our discussion in Germany has been very much consumed by the issues of coal power plants and replacing coal power plants with renewable electricity and the coal exit. And we have almost not had the capacity to really additionally think about the fact that the electricity consumption in Germany is only 600 terawatt hours per year, whereas the total energy consumption is 2,500. So it's not only, how do we get renewable electricity in Germany, but it's also how do we get a climate neutral energy carrier, which is needed in addition to electricity, and which is also needed especially in industry, not only as energy, but also as raw material. And this is, I think, where this German-Portuguese connection could play an incredible role and really enable a transition and very much to the benefit and advantage of both economies, is when Portugal could become a new energy partner within the European Union. And where, this question of where do you get climate neutral energy from can be answered jointly in cooperation between Germany and Portugal. I think this, if we could really advance on that issue within the next few years before 2030, that will be one of the key contributions to successful climate protection in Germany as well as in the European Union total. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bellman. Mr. Lopez, how do you see this question that was just raised by Ms. Bellman? Do you see, where do you get the climate neutral energy from? Would that be a great possibility for a German-Portuguese partnership from your perspective?
Well, yes, I think so. In Portugal, we have a very ambitious plan for the coming years. For instance, presently, we already produce about 60% of our electricity from renewable power sources. But 10 years from now, we are expecting to turn it to 80%. So we are increasing largely the generation of electricity from renewable power sources. And now we are looking more carefully to solar PV generation. And so I do believe that we are here in Portugal as well as in Germany doing a similar path. Because in Germany, I also know that there is a tremendous effort to increase the production of electricity from both wind power and solar power. And so in both countries, we are making a similar trajectory in what concerns this change in the portfolio of generation. And we are doing similar moves. So as it was said before, so Germany is decommissioning coal-fired power plants. We are doing the same. For instance, in Portugal, coal-fired power plants will be all shut down in 2021. But this is something that is happening everywhere. The same is also taking place in Spain. So the Iberia will be free of coal-fired power plants in the coming years, 2 or 3 years from now, or even less than that. And so this also requires a lot of learning procedure in terms of how to cope with such amount of renewable generation that has a variability of changing in time. It changes in time. So it requires special ways to manage the system, meaning that we will have to increase the storage capability. And this is also taking place in Portugal and in Germany. So in Portugal, we are more looking at hydro pumping facilities because we have good hydro resources for that. As well as in Germany, I understood that there is also an effort to increase some reversible hydro pumping storage facilities in Germany, although this is not that much as we do in Portugal presently, also considering the dimension between the two countries. But in Germany, for instance, as far as I understood, there is an effort for increasing the storage in terms of batteries. Yes, so we need to learn how to manage the system, also taking into account that we cannot never jeopardize the security of supply of both systems. So there are lots of lessons being taken from the operation of both systems, and we can pass those lessons to other countries that want to also to follow the same path.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mr. Lopez. Ms. Marquez, talking about a closer connection and of course a closer partnership, where do you see possibilities and of course possibilities to strengthen these partnerships for foster also a cooperation? Do we need more communication, or do we know already a lot in our German-Portuguese partnership, or do we need to talk a little bit more as well?
Well, I think Portugal and Germany have always been very close partners regarding technology transfers, and also on commercial basis. What we believe is that we will strengthen the technology based transfer and also begin a more commercial flow between Portugal and Germany in terms of chemicals and in terms of energy carriers products. So I think we will strengthen our relationship. I don't think it's a big effort is needed to improve this, but really I think it will become natural. I think Germany is a natural partner for Portugal. Portugal has the conditions to produce energy carriers that Germany needs. So really, it's a good fit.
Thank you. Mr. Haas, I'd like to ask you as well the question, how to strengthen this partnership? Where do you see, of course, room for improvement and, of course, room for more communication?
Yeah, thank you very much. I also would like to underline that it is really a perfect fit. On the one hand, the technology part, I think both to have very strong universities and university operations so that we can learn from each other. On the other hand, we have the situation as strengthened already, a very good solar situation and renewable situation in Portugal. This is also a chance for whole Europe, I think, and in combination with technology, I think we really can turn it, as Ms. Marquez just explained, into chemicals and energy. So we should really strengthen this. What can we do? I think we should also consider how to take the risk, because the downside, at least I can only talk about Germany, is a little bit that we are very risk averse. So we don't like to take any risk. And maybe in here we should focus a bit more on the chances on both sides, Portugal and Germany, and to see how we can take these chances, what you can really do in here instead of considering does it really come? Is it not just talking and not really reality in the future, and all these hindrances? So we should really consider how to avoid the risks and how to take the risks so that we can really go forward.
Thank you. We already discussed a little bit about hydrogen, so I'd like to dive into that. Now, Mr. Bovenschulte, maybe you can give us an insight on the role that that green hydrogen can play for climate neutral production? Where do you see it? Is it just a hype, the green hydrogen, or is it a realistic way forward?
I think it's definitely not a hype. It's strong, and I think it's a necessary option to get Germany, Portugal, and Europe more or less climate neutral. It will not be something like the silver bullet, which will resolve any and each problem. It has to be seen in combination, for example, in the mobility sector with e-mobility, and you have some big trucks which need a high energy density. These are cases for hydrogen. Cars which run within the city are better used with the battery technologies, but definitely it is a strong impact, for example, as well in industry, steel production and so on, which is today highly CO2 emitting, and there we have a big leverage effect. And to do so, there are some different opinions on the way. Everybody talks about now something like a horizon of 2030 to have industry scale up production of hydrogen by electrolysis, and many of them say, well, until this time horizon, we can't have sufficient green electricity to do so, and maybe we need as well some blue or even gray hydrogen to fuel these fully scaled industrial processes. I'm not too aware if this is true or not, because nobody knows what technical progress will be done within the next 10 years. But coming back to Germany and Portugal in this field of production of green hydrogen, I think, as Mr. Haas said, and I think Mr. Lopez as well, we have to come from words to action. And maybe one big point is, where does all the qualified work come from? Where do the workers come from to cope and to handle hydrogen? If it's green or not doesn't play a big role, but as well to run all these refineries to generate green hydrogen. And if you look at all these hydrogen strategies of the European Union or different countries as well on world level, nobody says a word about vocational training and education, and where do the qualification come from? And I think this could be a big step forward if, for example, Portugal and Germany would have a system to develop in parallel to the new technical standards as well educational standards. Of course, it's something that should happen on European level or worldwide level, but somebody has to start with. And this could be really a big point forward for the whole implementation of safe and functioning and well-working hydrogen generation process and infrastructures.
Mr. Bovenschulde, you said, you just mentioned somebody has to start. Do you see this on the side of the policymakers, or do you see that on the side of the companies?
Honestly spoken, it's a policy question, but it has to be taken up as well by the companies. If the companies said, no, there's no need for qualified work, then it's something like which goes up in the blue. But I think all these technologies are now as well developed, implemented, and there is a need for what we call in Germany Facharbeit as well. So to impulse these processes, if there's an industrial pull and a policy push, then you can easily manage. Of course, these are as well time-consuming processes. But as I mentioned, we have now something like a window of opportunity of about 10 years until we have the fully fledged industrial scaled-up refineries. And then we have now 10 years from today to implement as well such a system of education and training. And not only, it's an important place, university, which is the academic part, but as well of the day-and-day operations work, which most likely will not need academics, but as well need qualified, I don't know the English term, Facharbeiter. So this is a good point to start in an intertwined process, industry and policy, Portugal and Germany.
Thank you. Mr. Bovenschulde, coming of course into the academia, Mr. Lopez, this is clearly your part working at the University of Porto. So where do you see the responsibility of creating more possibilities for a higher qualification and of course in terms of vocational training? Mr. Lopez, can you hear me? I was just mentioning, of course, asking you, where do you see the responsibility on the academic side, of course, in fostering the qualification and vocational trainings in the field? Mr. Lopez.
Yes, of course. The universities, they have a very large responsibility in promoting new curriculum that are capable to supply to the industry what they need. Because in fact, as it was already mentioned, we know we will need a lot of requalification of some personnel that are presently working on the industry and that are needed to cope with these new challenges. And for instance, I can tell you that in Portugal, we are doing this effort not only in terms of the university itself, but a little bit considering that on top of that, we need to develop first so research and development and the innovation in order to find out what are the solutions, and then learn from that research and innovation and find out what profiles should be developed and to find the curricula for those staff people that the industry will need. I can tell you, for instance, that in Portugal, we are now developing a collaborative laboratory called HiLab that is looking at developing competencies, high-tech competencies for hydrogen. And several universities and research institutions are together with the industry looking at those possibilities. And we do believe that we will be capable to be excellent in 2 or 3 main research domains that are needed to develop hydrogen in the future. And in this way, we are learning, and we will be capable into technology. And this is something that Portugal also targets. And we are expecting this to take place in the coming years.
Ms. Marquez, talking about highly skilled staff, do you have the same problems in getting highly skilled staff, or do you don't have any problems because you are actually caring for the qualification for vocational trainings in-house? How do you tackle it?
Well, I think education is always important, and to have a better education and to have better knowledge on how to deal with hydrogen is very important. But really, hydrogen is nothing new for the chemical industry and for the petrochemical industry. We are used to handling hydrogen. We are used to producing hydrogen. So we have knowledge in-house for that. Of course, we do not have the knowledge for new technologies to produce hydrogen, and this is something we need to develop, and we need education, and we need investigation and R&D, and we need universities to help us on that. But really, we don't see that as a barrier. What we worry about is how to be competitive in the hydrogen we are producing. So really, I think that education may be a problem, but the big problem here is how to make cost-effective hydrogen. How can we reduce the electricity costs? We know that hydrogen can be a very that electricity produced from renewables is relatively cheap, but really the infrastructures need to be paid. How can we put our hydrogen cheap? How can we put our electricity cheap so we can decarbonize? And how can we create a level playing field across Europe so that every industry in Europe can have the same rules and the same access to costs, to competitive costs. So this is really the main worry we have in Portugal, is how we can have, we believe we should have a regulated and harmonized energy market so that we can have energy at competitive prices, so that we can have hydrogen at competitive prices. Or else what we will see is hydrogen coming from other countries outside Europe to fulfill our need for green hydrogen, which maybe not green hydrogen, but is hydrogen. So really, we need new technologies, we need development, we need new skills, but we also need more regulated policies so that we can really boost this industry.
Thank you, thank you. Ms. Bellman, of course, I'd like to dive now into the question of the political frameworks with you. What political frameworks, from your perspective, are further needed? In Germany, we have the Nationale Wasserstoffstrategie, the National Hydrogen Strategy, only directed to green hydrogen. Europe's hydrogen strategy is more open for the blue hydrogen and methods like carbon capture and storage. Would you say that the EU is more open for innovation and technologies with more courage than Germany is presented currently in the field, or would you disagree?
Well, I'm actually not sure. I think also the German national strategy contains an opening sentence towards CCS and methane pyrolysis, to climate neutral hydrogen produced from natural gas. And the question is whether it's the door is open enough or not. Yeah, that's the current debate, I guess, and we don't know the final answer to that yet. My view and the view from WWF Germany is that we still have a huge implementation gap in just about every field that needs to contribute to climate neutrality. So we have tons of opportunities for energy efficiency and circular economy. We have tons of opportunities for direct electrification with 100% renewable electricity. We definitely need hydrogen in addition to that. And while renewable hydrogen based on electrolysis with 100% renewable electricity is definitely the long-term best solution, we may not be able to close the gap to climate neutrality just with those major efforts, and they may still be a residual role for industrial CCS. So climate neutrality is a big challenge, and we probably need all technological opportunities to contribute.
Thank you, Mr. Bovenschulde. Also, the question goes to you. Do we need more political frameworks? And if so, what are you currently missing?
When it comes to energy infrastructure, this is managed as a public means. Normally, it's not something which is only in the hands of companies. I know we see the tendency to have it more in a commercial way, but honestly spoken, these are investments which go normally far beyond any company. And even if we adapt existing infrastructure to be, or at least partially resistant to hydrogen, because it's quite aggressive gas, this will sum up to high costs and amounts. I would like to take the point which Teresa Marquez mentioned. How can we guarantee that we have something like a fair market where we, with our possibly green hydrogen, can survive without being overrun by gray or blue hydrogen coming from abroad? I don't know if this goes to the WTO and how to do so, but this is quite interesting experience we had with the photovoltaic industry in Germany. Now we had all these market-leading technologies, and then we were run over by Chinese imports. Other countries like Canada made it better. They said we have to have the production lines right here, and we have some customs put on this. Maybe this could be helpful as well, but definitely we need a stronger regulation in this case to guarantee the compliance of these climate objectives.
Coming into the question of importing hydrogen, where do you see, Mr. Boven-Schulte, there the future of course, the European market? Are you afraid that we're going to be dependent on hydrogen from fragile regions?
I mean, Germany lives with dependency on energy imports for ages now. I mean, it's something like the usual case. Of course, all these energy partnerships play a vital role in the policy concepts, and I think it's not that bad. The only point is, please avoid a single source. If you have a strong power generation within Europe, with partnerships like Portugal and Spain, where something like a sun belt for Europe is located, and as well have North African countries, because it's something like a bi-directional way. If you do have investment there, you produce work in these countries, you stabilize as well these countries, and maybe this is a big option for development towards democracy and open and fair societies. So it's not something like only dependency, it's a big chance as well. And if you do so, you have to think about what conditions can you offer. And maybe in this point, Europe needs something like a technology foreign policy to really make a big statement, to act as a big player in this field, with as well the possibility to set standards and to as well govern the rules of all these regimes we are faced with.
Thank you, Mr. Boven-Schulte. Now we're coming to your questions, dear audience. So thanks for sending me all your questions. Starting with the first one, as we learned earlier today from the Mentimeter poll, the people are optimistic about the Green Deal despite the COVID pandemic, COVID-19. Without a doubt, its implementation needs ideas and money. Do we need to have developed more risk takers and support entrepreneurs in Europe? And do we need more venture capital? Mr. Haas, what would you say to this question?
Thank you very much. A clear yes. Well, this is what I just said. We don't have the culture at the moment in Europe. It's more in the United States, risk-taking and ventures and all these things. For sure, that's absolutely.
But where do you see the work to do? Sorry to interrupt you. Where do we need to tackle these missing points? Not just talking about what we are missing, but also, of course, the how-to-dos.
First thing is to get the political setting. Sorry to go back to this political part. We need a setting for all the ventures at first. We need competitive energy, competitive hydrogen. Otherwise, no venture would survive in Europe. So why should they do it in Europe? So we need a setting that is really competitive compared to other areas in the world. That's the first step. And the second step is the financing fund. I think this is something Europe can do very well. So really to have something like a venture fund in here. But we need both steps. First, we need a competitive setting. And the second one, we need the venture funding in here.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Ms. Bellman, how would you answer this question? Do we need more? Do we need the development of risk takers and entrepreneurs in Europe to go forward?
I think this is almost beyond question. We had this problem for a long time in Europe that we don't have enough venture capital, and a lot of European money goes to, let's say, the United States and invests there in venture. So this is certainly a problem, and it would help. All the things that Mr. Haas has pointed out would certainly help to attract investors into Europe, into climate neutral technologies in Europe. I would also say that what will help is clear sustainability criteria and clear guidance, clear rules that give the investors a confidence that, if you invest here in Europe, it's going to be sustainable. And it's not going to be like, 5 years from now, somebody comes around and discovers, oh, let's say there's nuclear energy going into hydrogen production, and now we are all against it, and we are going to close your operation down because it turns out it's not as sustainable as we thought it was. Those insecurities for investor are probably as bad as purely financial terms. So I would encourage us also in this hydrogen discussion and in the partnership development to clearly set forth rules. Where does the energy come from? Where is the water coming from? How is it treated when it's released back into the environment? What other resources are needed? Also metals, are they procured sustainably? Maybe the electrolysis is not in a risk region, but the metals it's using in its equipment production are from horribly high risk regions and are not sustainable. Clear rules and clear sustainability criteria. I think it is important for us, I must say, from environmental protection point of view. But I think the investors have their interest aligned there because they are going to invest large amounts of money in infrastructural things, and they have to know that those infrastructural things are going to be there for the next 50 years sustainably and reliably with a license to operate. And so sustainability criteria, I think, are very important.
As I hear it, there's already a big knowledge about it, but it's hard to come from knowledge to action. So, Ms. Bellman, just an after question. Where do you see the responsibilities? Where do you see it? Is it on a European level to have this new branding of European and sustainable investment in Europe? Or is it the responsibility of the German brands and Portuguese brands or the partnerships? Where do you see the responsibilities?
Well, formally speaking, since we have an EU market, then there should be also an EU regulation that sets a frame which does not prevent Germany and Portugal, let's say, to go ahead and pioneer, come forward with innovative suggestions and convince the other partner countries with the EU that this is a good solution for the European market. So I'm not sure that you can even divide it up like this. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Germany has a century of experience with energy partnerships. There's probably something we can contribute even out of a unilateral, thought process. But then bilateral, trilateral initiative can all inform the EU decision making. And at the end, probably most advantages can be secured in a larger market space, just like Ms. Marquez said, EU-wide framework for a competitive EU industry and competitive EU energy system is probably more advantageous than each little country going one by one, creating own regulations.
Thanks, Ms. Bellman. Thank you. I have another question from the chat. Is there a role for a carbon tax on electricity, gas, or hydrogen imports? Mr. Lopez, how would you answer this question? Is there a role for a carbon tax on electricity, gas, or hydrogen imports?
Can you repeat the question? I am having some troubles with the connection.
Oh, sorry to hear that. I hope it's going to be better in a moment. The question from the chat is following. Is there a role for a carbon tax on electricity, on gas, or hydrogen imports?
For gas and hydrogen imports, well, I think Europe has resources, especially renewable power resources, that are enough to produce the hydrogen it may need for at least in the first years of this transition. For instance, as it has already been mentioned by other panelists, we have in the south of Europe lots of resources, solar resources. In the north of Europe, there's a lot of wind power. So we can develop our own industry to produce hydrogen and using so wind power from North Sea and solar power from the south of Europe, and to produce hydrogen without the need to make imports well, at least for the first years of all this transition, as I already mentioned. We have the technology, we have the resources, and so we are capable to do it without the need of doing those imports. This is my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Coming to the wind energy you were just mentioning, wind energy alone was 23%, placing Portugal in the top European countries for wind energy last year. So Portugal has clearly a great potential to make the most out of the European Green Deal. But the question is also to you, Mr. Lopez, can Portugal also lose this opportunity if it didn't simplify the permitting procedures for new and reopened wind farms? Can you give us an insight into that?
Well, of course, that we have to simplify the procedures to the increase of the installed capacity in wind power. Well, in Portugal, we already have about 5,500 megawatts of installed capacity, and we are aiming at in 10 years from now to pass to about 9,000 megawatts. Of course, part of this increase in installed capacity will be made through repowering, and also in some other places we will see the overcapacity investments. But I also understand that some places where the resource was not that good at the beginning of this search for places where to put wind power plants. Now, with the improvements that the technology has witnessed in the last years, that we will see that some other places will now also receive new wind generation. And of course, I understand that the procedures for the installation, they have to be simplified, but very important also is to mention that we need to build network infrastructures capable to receive the increases of renewable generation. And also very important is to increase the way how the system operators they operate. So distribution system operators and transmission system operators, they need to talk more frequently. And so this is something that needs to be improved in the coming years, not only in Portugal, but for sure in other countries like Germany, where we can see that there is a lot of generation popping up from the distribution side. And so this requires a lot of interactions between these two system operators. So it's not only the procedures that need to be simplified, it's also creating conditions, technical conditions in terms of the network to receive the extra power and to increase this collaboration between system operators.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Thank you. Coming now again to Ms. Marquez with a question and to Mr. Haas in a moment, because the next question goes clearly to our two company representatives. The chat question by a user like to know, can the two company representatives explain further how they decided on their current activities with regard to hydrogen? Where do you see the business case? And of course, talking about the challenges you are facing and what is needed in terms of innovation, but also policy support. So 3 questions in one. Ms. Marquez, I'd like to start with you. How did I decide, or how do you decide on your current activity with regards to hydrogen? Where do you see your business case? Talking a little bit about the challenges and of course what is needed in terms of support.
Well, this is a very big question.
Step
so
by step.
let's break it into parts. So the first question for us, it's a natural investment, because we are for a long time a producer and a consumer of hydrogen and ammonia. So this comes as a complement to our business. We really are used to producing hydrogen. We are used to consuming it. So we are off takers. This is for us natural. What we are doing is trying to expand our business with our knowledge. So we have the know-how internally, and we will have, and this is for us a natural way, a natural path to grow in our strategy.
Where do you see your business case exactly?
Where do we see our business case? We see it on reducing imports and getting more hydrogen and being able to export more and be able to sell more and to grow as a company in sales, as any company.
And of course, the next 2 questions.
This is what we thrive, no?
Yeah,
to increase sales and increase profit. So really, this is an opportunity that we cannot miss.
And which challenges are on your way currently?
Well, the big challenges is, first of all, it's, as I stated previously, energy costs, because we need a lot of energy to do this transition, being it on electrification, being it on producing hydrogen, producing ammonia. We really need more competitive electricity prices so that our hydrogen becomes more competitive. This is the big challenge we have. Also, we have a challenge in R&D and the need to develop new technologies for producing hydrogen more efficiently. And of course, we need funding for this, and we need to take advantage of all possibilities of funding, so that we can build our business case and we can start producing. Also, one very important thing was what was said previously about the risk taking. We really need a stable platform framework for hydrogen. We really need to understand that the investments we are going to make are going to be paid off in the future. And this is something that it's very difficult to deal with. So we really need a stable framework from European policies about what would be the green deal, what will be our goals, how can we, what will be the main achievements we need to tackle. So really, this is something that it's still not very. It's not very well known yet, so we really need to have a stable and predictable framework for to develop our investments. And then we have to deal with all the intermittency of the new energy sources. So as you know, energy from solar and wind is intermittent, meaning we won't have energy when we want. We will have energy when sun and wind lets us have energy. So we really need to develop demand side mechanisms and storage of electricity so that we can maintain our business case and our plants operating despite the intermittency of the grid, despite having fluctuations in production of electricity. So we have to understand this is a very intensive electricity consumption business model. And so we really need to understand how we can tackle all these problems and how we can take advantage of it.
Thank you,
this
Ms.
is
Marquez.
really the big risk.
Thank you. Mr. Haas, this question also goes, of course, to you. So maybe you can explain us again how you decided on your current activities with regard to hydrogen, and where do you see currently your business case?
Yeah, at the moment, there is a belief also in our company that the world will change, that the future will change in here. And in our chemical industry, we need to be prepared. We cannot just start when the change starts, because then we are too late. And we desperately need to be competitive in the whole world. So to be prepared, we do have these activities like this Reticus project in our company at the moment. Nevertheless, we also get funding from here. So risk sharing is very important. So we don't take this risk alone. At the moment, we are really on a stage where we want to start a demonstration part. So what do we need for the future? And at the moment, we really need more than words. We need an implementation path so that this meaning the future will change, that it really takes place. And I don't want to repeat what you all said, and especially Ms. Marquez, it's absolutely right. But we really need to go this step. Otherwise, we will stick again at the stage of implementation because we don't have the setting. Or we need to go to other continents where we do have the setting in terms of energy and carbon dioxide price. I think at the moment there is still the persuasion that it will take place, but we are careful about the timing. But this becomes more and more critical.
Mr. Bovenschulte, talking about timing, what would you suggest? Would you agree with Mr. Haas?
I have two hearts in my breast. On the one hand side, I think it's quite right what you said, but on the other hand side, what we said about startups and new market participants, it comes something like to a slight contradiction, because these startups, they operate due to the idea of no risk, no fun. So there is no insurance company for every risk in innovation. And I'm very sad to say so. There is no riskless innovation, and not in hydrogen, not in energy, not in the world. So maybe it's something like we have to equilibrate a bit better, in a better way, to have the risks something like buffered and not overcoming. But at the same hand side, you have to open up the market or the sector for new ideas from startups that, yes, take the risk to try to have another, maybe as well, disruption business model in hydrogen. We all by now don't think about. I don't know how big the span is where you can move physically, and have these opportunities as well. Because if we do regulate everything and guarantee everything, honestly spoken, there is no big need for a strong innovation impulses, and we don't have to lose these possibly already existing ideas that really may change the world in hydrogen and energy.
But Mr. Bovenschulte, is Europe then the place or the location of this ecosystem for startups, or do you think it's always, or it's ever becoming the ecosystem for startups?
Yeah, I mean, if you say Europe is not the place, then we can all go home and wait until some Silicon Valley companies come up with a good idea. I mean, what opportunities do we have, or what alternatives? We have to make it. And of course, Europe as well changed a lot due to the experiences in digitalization and artificial intelligence. I mean, everybody on the company level as well, on the policy level, are quite aware, everybody's quite aware that we do have to change to open up, to facilitate fast-track processes and so on and so on. And I'm quite convinced that Europe is a very good place as well for disruptive business models due to its strong academic and technological base. You don't have to forget we have a quite diverse economy that can, as Europe in total, produce nearly every product in the world if you leave CPUs out. But I mean, it's a strong internal market with strong participants on country level as well on company level. And we have to mobilize these potentials. And we can.
Thank you. Ms. Bellman, another question to you. Is there technological cooperation, for example, on hydrogen or other aspects of the energy transition between countries like Germany and Portugal already in place? And how could this be strengthened also maybe under the EU presidencies? Ms. Bellman.
I'm actually not sure if enough cooperation is already in place, but I certainly believe that there could be, and there could be definitely strengthened. I fully agree with what Mr. Bovenschultes said for the innovation potentials of the new technologies, and would like to add that at the same time, there is always an infrastructure which is always regulated and where governments always have to play a strong role. Someone had gone someplace and built a Suez Canal so oil imports can happen into Europe. And so for the climate neutral technologies, also some government, and it's probably the EU Commission, or maybe it's Germany and Portugal in a bilateral way, they have to go and build, the Suez Canal 4.0. And there also needs to be security of supply. There needs to be a regulated infrastructure which is reliable, and which is up to a matter of national security. And this has to certainly be regulated, and governments have a very important role to play here in the transition. I fear that they underestimate currently the role that they must play in the transition, and there's a lot of market liberal influence that say we are all going to do everything through innovation. Innovation needs an infrastructure base to then spring up and flourish, and it's actually one of the things that people like about other regions when they invest in there, that they have a reliable base. So I think we need both. We need a lot of engagement from companies and innovation, but we also need a lot of engagement from governments in creating this reliable regulation for infrastructure.
Thank you, Ms. Bellman. Also appointing this question to Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez, I hope you can hear me well. Coming with a question from the chat, is there technological cooperation between countries, for example, like Germany and Portugal in place, and how could this be strengthened from your perspective?
Well, we already have cooperation that is founded on the European research programs. So within the framework of H2020, there were a lot of collaboration, and we developed a lot of research groups with Germany and other European countries. Now, with the Green Deal calls, there are also possibilities of developing further this collaboration, as well as in the future with the Horizon to Europe, where I do believe that there is also room for further collaboration in this domain. But in fact, there is an important issue here. That is, for the coming years, we need to invest, and when I say we, is Europe. Europe needs to invest a lot in science. And we need to accelerate the cycle of innovation, because we are now facing considerable amounts of climatic threats, and the only way to cope with this is to find out solutions that are capable to stop this. For instance, the temperature increase that is foreseen for the coming years. So, and now we need to do it as much as possible, as soon as possible. I mean, so if we look at the the path that we need to develop. This is not a walk. This is a run. We need to run against time to find out solutions. And so in order to be sure that the solutions we are going to develop are robust enough, we need to invest in science. And of course, Germany and Portugal, we have a common collaboration research story in the past years, and the successful stories of the collaboration. And I'm sure that we will continue doing so.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Coming closely to an end, Mr. Haas, there was one question regards the German companies. I just read out the comment. I wonder, this is what this user is writing, I wonder whether German companies that produce high-value chemicals are wondering to invest in Portugal and directly benefit of the low cost of solar energy to produce green chemicals. Mr. Haas, what would be your comment to that?
For sure, it is highly welcome. We definitely would like to invest in Portugal. As I said, it has to be competitive at the end of the day. At the moment, it's not. We believe there is a big chance in the future, especially based on the collaboration we are discussing just here. I just want to repeat, it's highly welcome, and I don't see any reason why we should not invest or could not invest. The chemical industry is a global industry. It's investing the whole world. So why not in Portugal? And especially under the Green Deal, Portugal for me is one of the top countries where that should be possible.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Bovenschulte, another question for you. Can and should hydrogen be a part of the mobility transition? Please, with a concrete and short answer.
Definitely yes. Definitely to high-performance vehicles. I don't know if we will fly with hydrogen in the near future, but it might be an option as well. The potential of synthetic fuels, I don't know, because they are so energy inefficient, but maybe in 10 years, everybody takes this as a strong opportunity. To sum it up, yes, it will play a role.
Thank you very much. This is a clear yes. And as Christmas is around the corner, it's time for a little wish list, ladies and gentlemen. We will have the two representatives from Germany and Portugal on EU affairs on the panel shortly, so we are on the path from the German to the Portuguese EU presidency. What would be your message that you like to convey to them? What is your wish on the presidency wish list? Maybe another keyword, and we're doing a round again, starting with Ms. Marquez.
This is you caught me up by surprise. So if I want a wish list, I would like to ask for a European framework for hydrogen, where electricity costs are competitive and a level playing field between Europe. I think that's the main areas where we want to be. We need to develop in order to be competitive and to survive in this new industry.
Thank you, Ms. Marquez. Ms. Bellman, I head over to you.
I think I already kind of formulated it. I would hope for Suez Canal 4.0 for climate neutral energy carriers.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, what is on your wish list for the upcoming EU presidency?
Yes, I have a very simple statement. Invest more in science and innovation.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Haas, I hand over to you.
Yeah, please think carefully as EU about a careful framework to become competitive or to really get Suez 4.0 to be done, and don't stick just to energy, hydrogen or methane. Really consider all imports and exports in this direction. And it's not an easy task, but this is very important and it's urgent.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Bovenschulte.
Make the Green Deal reality and don't lose the momentum.
Thank you very much for your statement. Thanks for joining at this high-level panel. And of course, thanks for watching.